On the night I died, snow had covered the courtyard of the Liu Manor so heavily that even the servants had stopped sweeping. I lay on the cold stone floor outside my husband's chamber, my fingers stained red where my nails had clawed against the frozen ground. Inside, laughter echoed. My husband, Liu Zhan, was celebrating. Not my recovery, not my survival, but my death. I could hear the soft voice of my younger cousin, Lin Wan, the woman he truly loved. Will she finally die tonight? She asked gently. Liu Zhan sighed as though burdened by kindness. She should have died years ago. Had she not insisted on marrying me, none of this would have happened. My heart shattered. I had spent 10 years serving his family. I sold my dowry to save the Liu family business during famine. I knelt for 3 days in the snow to beg the imperial physician to save Liu Zhan's mother. I embroidered until my fingers bled to pay his younger brother's gambling debts. When Liu Zhan failed the imperial examination twice, I comforted him through every humiliation. And when he finally rose to power, he rewarded me with poison. The bowl of medicine beside me tonight was mixed with poison by my own mother-in-law, the same woman who once held my hands and called me daughter. My mother-in-law said from inside the room, "Yuero is already carrying a child. Once Lin Wan dies, we can announce the marriage properly." Lin Wan was my name. Even hearing my own name felt distant. I wanted to scream. I wanted to burst into the room and ask them why. But I couldn't even lift my body or speak. I already knew the reason. Because I was useful. Because I was obedient. The poison burned through my chest. Snowflakes landed against my face. My vision dimmed. And with my final breath, I whispered toward the heavens. If there is another life, I will never love him again. Thunder cracked through the sky. I woke with a gasp. Warm air filled my lungs. There was no snow. There were no signs of poison. It was warm spring air. The familiar canopy above me, silk curtains, jade incense burner, peony screens. It was my maiden chamber. I stood up quickly. No. Impossible. My body was light, young and healthy. The coughing sickness that had haunted me for years after marriage was gone. My hands trembled as I stared at them. Smooth skin. No scars from embroidery needles. No signs of exhaustion. A maid rushed inside. "Miss, you're finally awake." It was Qingyu, my loyal maid. In my previous life, she had died protecting me from Liu Zhan's drunken younger brother. Tears instantly filled my eyes. Qingyu froze. "Miss, are you unwell?" I grabbed her wrist. "You're alive." She blinked in confusion. "Of course I'm alive." My breathing became uneven. "What year is this?" Qingyu looked startled. "It is the 17th year of Emperor Yonghe." My heart stopped. 3 months before my marriage to Liu Zhan, I had returned. The heavens had truly given me another chance. The memory of poison filled my throat. The humiliation, the betrayal, the coldness in Liu Zhan's eyes. I clenched my right hand fist tightly. This time, I would not become his stepping stone. This time, I would destroy him first. The next morning, my father called me to the main hall. In my previous life, this had been the day everything changed. The Liu family would arrive. Liu Zhan would recite poetry. Everyone would praise his elegance. And I, foolish and naive, would fall in love. As I entered the hall, I immediately saw him. Liu Zhan. He was wearing white robes like a noble scholar. He looked young and handsome. Anyone looking at him would think he was gentle, kind, and refined. Only I knew the cruelty hidden beneath that face. When his eyes landed on me, he smiled. In my previous life, that smile made my heart race. Now it made me sick. He said politely, "Greetings, Miss Lin." I averted my gaze to hide the hatred burning inside me. On my father's side sat another young man. He was tall, silent. Dressed in dark robes embroidered with silver clouds, he looked more handsome than Liu Zhan, but his presence alone made the room feel colder. He was Shunli, the feared Prince of Ning. In my previous life, he died young during the Northern War. People called him ruthless, emotionless, a blood-stained general. But I remembered one thing clearly from my previous life. During the winter famine, when the capital nobles hoarded food, Shunli secretly opened his grain stores to starving commoners. I accidentally witnessed it on my way to run an errand for Lu Zhen. At the time I thought, even demons can possess kindness. My father smiled warmly. Wanner, both families have come today regarding marriage discussions. I already knew. The Lu family wanted my wealth, but the prince's household didn't have anything to gain from this marriage. In my previous life, I eagerly chose Lu Zhen. This time, I slowly raised my eyes and looked directly at Xinli. The prince stared back silently. His eyes were dark and unreadable. I said calmly, "Father, I choose Prince Ning." The entire hall fell silent. Lu Zhen's smile froze. My father nearly dropped his teacup. Even Shun Li looked surprised. In my previous life, I had never even spoken to him. Lu Zhen forced a laugh. Miss Lin must be joking. I turned toward him. My voice remained soft. No. Why would I? His expression stiffened. For the first time, I saw panic in his eyes. He was expecting me to marry him, but I asked to marry Prince Ning. Rumors about Prince Ning were spread in the entire capital. They said he killed enemies without mercy. They said his residence was haunted by ghosts. They said even servants trembled when he walked by. It didn't matter to me if those rumors were true or not. Even if they were, he was still far better than that manipulator and fraud Lu Zhen. The marriage took place 1 month later. Unlike my wedding in the past life, there was no false sweetness. No poetic promises. No pretending. Xinli barely spoke during the ceremony, but neither did he humiliate me. That alone felt like mercy. When night fell, I was sitting in our bridal chamber quietly. He entered the room and stood near the window. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then he said, "You do not fear me?" It was a question. I lowered my eyes. I fear people who hide knives behind smiles. I heard a low laugh. It was brief. He said, "I have a reputation for frightening women." I lifted my veil, looked at him and smiled. I am not easily frightened anymore. Something shifted in his expression. Not warmth, not yet, but curiosity. He poured tea for me himself. A prince serving his bride. In my previous life, Lu Zhen never even carried my umbrella. "Why did you choose me?"
Shunli asked.
I could not tell him the truth that I died once already, that I knew the future, that I wanted to save myself from the scumbag Lu Zhen. So instead, I answered honestly in another way. Because I believe you would never betray me. His hand paused. The room became quiet. The first step in revenge is patience. In my previous life, I handed the Lu family everything they needed. But this time, I'm going to cut off every path. Lu Zhen's family depended heavily on silk trade routes connected to my father's merchants. Without those connections, most of their business would suffer. So I persuaded father to redirect all shipments south. Within weeks, rumors spread through the capital. The Lu family was losing silver. The creditors were demanding repayment. Lu Zhen began visiting our residence repeatedly under the excuse of old friendship with my father, even though I refused to see him every time. Xinli disliked him immediately. One evening, after Lu Zhen left after multiple failed attempts to meet me, Xinli asked, "Did he offend you?" I looked down at the chessboard between us.
Yes.
He did something terrible to me in the past. Xinli suddenly stood up in anger and lifted his sword from the other table. "Do you want him dead?" I nearly laughed. The terrifying Prince Ning truly solved problems like a battlefield commander. "No," I said softly. "Death is too merciful." His eyes lifted toward me. "Then what do you want?" I remembered kneeling in the snow. I remembered poison. I remembered hearing laughter while dying. I want him to lose everything. Xinli studied me carefully. Most women in the capital pretended softness and innocence. I no longer had the strength for pretending. Instead of judging me, he simply said, "Then I will help you." Living in Prince Ning's residence was strangely peaceful. No one mocked me. No one treated me as a servant. No one demanded endless sacrifices. The servants respected me. The prince cared for me quietly. Every morning, Shunli left warm pastries outside my study because he overheard me mention liking lotus seed cakes. When I coughed during winter, he summoned the best physicians in the capital overnight. In my previous life, I spent years begging for scraps of affection. Now kindness arrived so naturally that it frightened me. One rainy evening, I found Shinli asleep at his desk. Documents covered the table.
Maps.
Military reports. Requests for aid from famine victims. He had worked himself unconscious. I quietly draped a blanket over his shoulders. His eyes opened instantly. A warrior's instinct. When he saw me, his expression softened. I whispered, "You should sleep." He replied, "You should too." I hesitated, then asked the question that had troubled me for weeks. "Why are you kind to me?" He looked genuinely confused. "You are my wife." As though that alone explained everything. As though care should be natural. As though love was not something to earn through suffering. My chest tightened painfully. In that moment, I realized how little I had been loved in my previous life. Just before the Mid-Autumn Festival, Lin Wan returned to the capital. My younger cousin, the woman who stole my husband in my previous life. She entered the palace banquet wearing pale pink silk and an innocent smile. Every nobleman turned to look at her. Yuero noticed me immediately. Then she noticed Shunli beside me. Jealousy was visible on her face. In my previous life, she expected to become the future Madame Lu. Now I sat beside a prince, way more powerful than Lu Zhen. The banquet had barely begun before she approached. She greeted Shinli and then spoke sweetly, "Elder sister." I nearly admired her acting. "It has been so long." I smiled politely. "Not long enough." Her expression twitched. Before she could respond, Lu Zhen approached as well. The moment their eyes met, I knew their affair had already begun.
Good.
The faster they destroyed themselves, the better. Yuero glanced at Shinli. "I heard Prince Ning rarely attends banquets. Sister must truly be favored." Her tone sounded complimentary, but underneath was jealousy. In my previous life, she mocked me constantly behind closed doors. Now she envied me. How ironic. Shinli suddenly spoke. "My wife deserves favor." Simple words. But they silenced the surrounding whispers instantly. Yuero's smile stiffened, and Lu Zhen's face darkened. For the first time, I enjoyed watching them suffer. After a few weeks, I heard Yuero got engaged to Lu Zhen, but for them, disaster arrived faster than expected. The Lu family invested heavily in northern trade caravans. In my previous life, I already knew that those routes were recently occupied by mountain bandits, so I had warned Lu Zhen about them, but he didn't listen to me. Luckily for him, Shinli and his army had wiped the bandits completely before Lu Zhen's caravans even passed by from that route. In this life, I didn't warn Lu Zhen and asked Shinli for help. Just like in my previous life, Shinli wiped out the bandits, but hired some mercenaries who disguised themselves as bandits and looted Lu Zhen's caravans on the northern route. They didn't harm anyone on the caravans as instructed, and just looted everything and fled. After that, the news of Lu Zhen getting looted by bandits and Shinli killing the bandits spread in the capital. Lu Zhen's 3 caravans had vanished, but he couldn't ask the authorities for help anymore, as he thought it was bandits who had looted him, and the bandits had already been killed by Prince Ning. He suffered a loss of thousands of silver taels overnight. The Lu family panicked. Debt collectors gathered outside their gates daily. Lu Zhen came to see me while Shinli was away. I wanted to see him looking exhausted and desperate, so I decided to meet him this time. He said quietly, "We were once close. Surely you can help me." I calmly poured myself tea. "In what way?" He hesitated. If Prince Ning would support the Lu family, there it was. The same greed, the same selfishness. I smiled gently. "Why should my husband help you?" Lu Zhen stepped closer. "Because you once loved me and did everything for me." The room became silent. He was also reborn. He remembered the past life. Panic surged through me, but I suddenly heard Shinli's voice in my head. I will help you. It gave me strength. In this life, I had the upper hand on Lucian. I was not his puppet anymore, and more importantly, he was the one in the wrong, and yet, he had the audacity to come to me for help. He was not showing any kind of remorse. I was disgusted by him. I laughed bitterly. Lucian stared at me in shock. I asked, "You think that was love?" "It was foolishness." His face paled. For years in my previous life, I watched him control every conversation. Now the power had shifted.
And he hated it.
"You've changed," he whispered. "Yes." I met his eyes calmly. And thank the heavens for that. Then I asked the servants to throw him out the door and never let him enter. He left angrily. One night, while organizing old documents in Shunli's study, I discovered something unexpected. A letter, addressed to Shunli. It was written years ago. My hands froze as I recognized the handwriting. It belonged to my late elder brother. In my previous life, my brother died during border conflicts. I opened the letter carefully. Inside were only a few lines. "If anything happens to me, please protect my sister. She trusts people too easily." My chest tightened, painfully. Shunli had known my brother. Suddenly, memories surfaced. Years ago, after my brother died, my family suffered heavily. Many officials who once respected father distanced themselves from us. Several business partners withdrew their support. At the time, I thought our recovery was simply luck. But now, as I stared at the letter in my hands, certain strange memories returned. The merchant who suddenly offered father financial assistance. The physician who arrived in the middle of the night when mother became ill. The anonymous silver delivered during the harsh winters. At the time, no one knew who helped us. The study door opened. Shunli entered. His gaze immediately landed on the letter. For once, the composed prince looked slightly uncomfortable. I whispered, "You knew my brother?" "Yes." I looked at him carefully. "And after he died, you helped my family." Silence lingered. Then he sighed softly. "Your brother once saved my life during a border skirmish." His voice remained calm. "I owed him a debt. So you repaid it by protecting us in secret and then asking for my hand in marriage." He spoke, lowering his gaze. "I simply ensured your family was not abandoned." Emotion rose painfully in my chest. He spoke as though it were insignificant. But I remembered how helpless those years felt after my brother's death. Without that unseen support, father's business may have collapsed long before my marriage. I asked quietly, "Why did you never tell me?" Shunli looked at me for a long moment. "I didn't want to burden you or your family." My fingers tightened around the letter. In my previous life, I spent years loving the man who demanded recognition for every small favor. Yet the man before me had protected my family silently for years, without expecting gratitude. Before I realized it, my eyes had begun to sting. Shunli, who mostly sat emotionless, was baffled after seeing me cry. "You are crying." I laughed softly through my tears. "Then perhaps it is, because no one has ever cared for me so much before." His usually cold expression softened completely. He hugged me to comfort me. A few days later, while Shunli was away on a border patrol, I decided to visit a mountain temple outside the city to pray for my brother. The journey should have been simple, but heavy snow suddenly blanketed the entire capital. While descending the icy stone steps, my foot slipped. Pain shot through my ankle instantly. I nearly fell before a strong hand caught me. Shunli. He had followed behind me the entire time without my noticing. "You're injured," he said immediately. "It's nothing," I insisted. The moment I tried standing, sharp pain forced me back down. Shunli frowned. Then, without hesitation, he bent slightly. "Get on." I stared at him in shock. "Your Highness," he said, "you cannot walk." Snow fell heavily around us. The servants nearby looked equally stunned. Prince Ning was feared across the empire. Yet now he stood patiently in the snow waiting to carry his wife. Slowly, I wrapped my arms around his shoulders. He carried me carefully on his back and walked down the mountain path. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Then, quietly, Shunli asked, Did you truly come here only to pray for your brother? I rested my cheek lightly against his shoulder.
Yes.
And perhaps to thank him as well. For what? I smiled faintly. For introducing me to you. I noticed the tips of his ears turn slightly red beneath the falling snow. I did not realize when my heart changed. Perhaps it was during quiet evenings playing chess beside candlelight. Perhaps it was the day he carried me through the snow after I injured my ankle. Or perhaps it was simply because he loved me selflessly and cared for me without demanding suffering. One evening, the capital celebrated the Lantern Festival. The streets glowed with gold and crimson lights. Couples filled the bridges. Children laughed. Music drifted through the air. I had heard Shunli rarely attended crowded festivals, and it was true, yet when I asked if he could go to the festival with me, he agreed immediately. We walked through the streets wearing simple cloaks to avoid attention. At one stall, I paused beside 2 fox masks. The vendor grinned, a perfect pair for husband and wife. Before I could respond, Shunli bought both masks. I stared at him. You actually enjoy this? I enjoy seeing you smile. The words were spoken naturally, without calculation, without manipulation. My chest warmed. For years, I thought love meant sacrifice. Now I realized, real love feels safe. As fireworks exploded above the river, Shunli suddenly reached for my hand. His fingers were warm, steady, and protective. I looked up at him, and for the first time in either lifetime, I truly felt alive. My cousin, Yuero, became impatient. She wanted status and wealth. But the collapsing Lu family could no longer offer it, so she made a dangerous choice. Even though she was still engaged to Lu Zhen, she attempted to seduce Shunli. Unfortunately for her, Shunli despised unfaithful men and women. During a palace banquet, Yuero deliberately arranged to encounter him alone inside the imperial garden. She wore thin silk robes despite the cold evening air. Her hair was slightly loosened. Her eyes filled with carefully practiced tears. I only wish to thank your highness personally for taking care of the empire so diligently, she said softly. Shunli immediately understood her intentions from her attire and the way she spoke. But instead of exposing her immediately, he decided to teach her a lesson and told me everything. Over the next several days, Yuero secretly sent him embroidered handkerchiefs and romantic letters. Finally, believing she had successfully charmed him, Yuero invited the him to meet privately at a lakeside pavilion late one evening. Instead, I arrived there with several noble women and palace attendants. Yuero's face instantly lost all color. I displayed her embroidered handkerchiefs and letters to everyone publicly. The servants testified about them. Even our palace guards confirmed her repeated attempts to approach the Shunli. I remarked lightly, Miss Lin seems deeply interested in my husband. Don't you remember you're already betrothed? Yuero collapsed on the floor from shame. Scandal exploded through the capital. Yuero's reputation shattered overnight. Lu Zhen also learned of it. Their relationship collapsed into public arguments. Exactly as I expected. Greedy people eventually betray each other. Soon after, the emperor launched an investigation into corrupted merchant families. The Lu family's illegal tax records were uncovered. In my previous life, I had burned those records. He didn't know about it and thought he was saved because of pure luck. This time, Shunli tipped the authorities. The result was immediate. They searched his estate and found the evidence. His property was seized, accounts were frozen, and he was arrested. Only after his mother begged the authorities, using her deteriorating health as an excuse, and paid a severe redemption fine, was he given a temporary release. One snowy evening, Lu Zhen appeared outside our residence. The proud scholar who once ignored me and got me killed me in my past life was now kneeling in desperation. The servants informed me immediately. Should we drive him away? Qingyu asked. I stared out the window quietly.
No.
I walked outside slowly. Snow fell around us. The same kind of night I died in my previous life. Lu Zhen looked terrible. His eyes were bloodshot. Water, please. His voice cracked. Help me one last time. I looked down at him silently, then asked, Do you remember the winter night you left me outside while I was dying? His face went pale instantly. I was wrong. Please forgive me. His words sounded empty. There was no remorse on his face. I leaned slightly closer. You disgust me. In this world, every debt must be repaid. Then I turned away and left him kneeling in the snow. The Liu family collapsed completely within 2 weeks. Liu Zhan was arrested again after his temporary release was over and was exiled 3,000 miles away. In this harsh and cold weather, without any food, clothes, money, or shelter, he was destined to suffer and die. Liu Zhan's younger brother was killed by loan sharks during a fight after he couldn't pay back the borrowed money. His mother couldn't bear the humiliation. She suddenly fell ill and passed away. The capital moved on quickly. No one pities fallen families for long. Spring arrived. Along with war, the northern tribes invaded once again. Just as they had in my previous life, the emperor ordered Xin Li to lead the army north. The entire capital celebrated. Everyone believed Prince Ning was invincible. They didn't see him as a human. They saw him as a cold-blooded murderer. No one saw his pure intentions to protect the people of the empire. Without his protection, the entire empire would have fallen into ruins by now. His ruthlessness on the battlefield saved countless lives, but earned him the reputation of a cold prince. Only I knew the truth. He seemed cold from the outside, but was actually kinder and better than most people. In my previous life, he died from an ambush during the 3rd month of battle. This time, I could not lose him. Fear consumed me. Perhaps Xin Li saw me worrying. To cheer me up, he asked me if I wanted to go out again, in disguise, just like last time. I agreed. We wore black cloaks and went out for a walk. Xin Li looked strangely relaxed beneath his disguise. No salutes. No fearful servants. No court officials watching his every movement. He looked like just a normal man walking quietly beside his wife. As we stopped near a tea stall, several drunken merchants nearby began speaking loudly. Did you hear? One scoffed. Prince Ning is going to the northern border tomorrow. Another snorted. That butcher? The emperor treats him like a hero simply because he knows how to kill. The men laughed. He's no different from a monster. They say entire battlefields turn red wherever he goes. Cold-blooded people, like him, deserve to die on the battlefield. I froze. Beside me, Xin Li remained silent. I slowly turned toward the men. And what exactly should he have done instead? I asked calmly. The merchants looked startled that a woman interrupted them. One frowned. What? I stepped closer. When enemies plundered our villages, where were you? When neighboring countries threatened the empire, where were you? The men stiffened. When bandits slaughtered merchants on trade routes, where were you? None of them answered. I continued coldly. You sit safely in the capital drinking tea, because men like Prince Ning stand between this empire and dangers and face hardships on the battlefield without caring for their own lives. The surrounding crowd began listening quietly. I could hear people agreeing with what I said. I rarely spoke so sharply, but hearing them insult Xin Li ignited something furious inside me. One day on the battlefield would break men like you, I said. Yet you mock the person protecting your lives. The merchant's expressions darkened immediately. One drunken man stood abruptly. How dare a woman lecture us? He raised his hand angrily, as though to shove me aside. Before he could touch me, Xin Li stepped silently behind me. The temperature around us seemed to drop instantly. Xin Li said nothing. But the moment the men saw his eyes beneath the shadow of his hood, their faces turned pale. The killing intent in Xin Li's gaze alone was terrifying. The drunken merchant staggered backward immediately. And no trouble intended. Another man lowered his head quickly. We were merely joking. Xin Li still did not speak. Yet none of them dared move. I glanced back at him. Even disguised as an ordinary man, he still carried the terrifying presence of a battlefield general. Xin Li placed one hand gently against my shoulder and said quietly, "Let's go." The crowd instantly parted for us. As we walked away from the market, silence lingered between us. Then softly, Xin Li asked, I am used to such comments. Why defend me and put yourself in danger? I looked at him in confusion. Because they were wrong. His gaze lowered slightly. Most people fear me. I corrected. They fear rumors. But I know who you really are. You are my husband. I saw something vulnerable flicker briefly in Shun Li's eyes. Then, after a moment, I lifted my hands into fists and added, "Whoever tries to bully my husband, they have to face my wrath." Shun Li suddenly burst out laughing. I lowered my hands. For the first time since our marriage, I saw him laughing. "You look more beautiful when you laugh. You should laugh more often." And though he quickly looked away after I said that, his hand found mine beneath the cover of our sleeves and held it tightly the rest of the walk home. No one slept that night. The entire residence remained lit with lanterns. Servants moved quietly through the halls preparing armor, weapons, and supplies for dawn departure. Yet inside our chamber, everything felt painfully still. Shun Li sat beside the table polishing his sword carefully while I folded extra winter robes into his traveling chest. Neither of us spoke for a long time. Finally, unable to endure the silence any longer, I said, "You must avoid the Eastern Valley during the 3rd month." His movements paused slightly. The cliffs there hide enemy archers. Slowly, Shun Li lifted his eyes toward me. The candlelight flickered across his face. "How do you know this?" My fingers tightened around the robe in my hands. I could not answer, honestly. Not yet. So instead, I stepped closer. "Please trust me." For several moments, he simply studied me. Then, quietly, "Will following your warnings save my soldiers?" "Yes, and most importantly, it will save you." Without another question, Shun Li nodded. "I believe you." That trust nearly shattered my heart. He set the sword aside and stood slowly. For once, the feared Prince Ning looked less like a general, and more like a man reluctant to leave home. His hand gently brushed against my cheek. "When I return," he said softly, "tell me the secrets you've been carrying alone." I lowered my gaze. "You truly wish to know?" "I wish to know every sorrow that still haunts you." Emotion burned painfully in my chest. Before I could respond, Shun Li suddenly pulled me into his arms. His embrace was strong, protective. "I am not afraid of dying on the battlefield," he admitted quietly. "But this time," his voice lowered further, "I fear leaving you behind alone." My breath caught. In my previous life, Lu Jin never once worried for my safety. Even during sickness, famine, and humiliation, I always endured alone. Yet now this man worried more for me than for himself. "I will wait for you," I whispered. Shun Li held me tighter. "You must protect yourself while I am gone." "I will. If court officials trouble you, use my authority." I nodded softly. "If anyone makes you unhappy," a dangerous coldness entered his voice, "write their names in your letters." Despite the heaviness in my chest, I laughed quietly. Only Shun Li could sound terrifying while expressing affection. Before dawn, as he prepared to leave, Shun Li held my hand tightly. My throat tightened. "Please promise to come back safe and sound." His forehead rested gently against mine. "I promise you this, Lin Wan." His eyes met mine steadily. "No matter how dangerous the battlefield becomes, I will return alive to you." For the first time since my rebirth, the fear inside my heart eased slightly, because I believed him. Then he left mounting his horse. The war stretched from weeks into months. Every day felt endless. Every night felt colder. Some days, letters arrived quickly. Other times, silence lasted so long that I could barely sleep. Yet no matter how chaotic the battlefield became, Shun Li always found a way to send me letters. They were short messages like, "The plum blossoms here are ugly compared to the ones you planted in our estate. The soldiers now believe my wife can predict the future and that I have married a goddess incarnate. Are you taking your meals on time? Is everything all right? Did anyone bother you?" I smiled every time, then worried even more. Even from the battlefield, he still worried about me. More months passed. Then finally, there was news of victory. Prince Ning returned triumphant. The ambush never succeeded. The enemy army was crushed. The capital erupted into celebration. When Shun Li rode through the city gates, thousands cheered. But he searched only for one person.
Me.
The moment our eyes met, I cried from relief. That night, after the celebrations ended, we sat together quietly beneath lantern light. I said, I am ready to share my secrets with you. Shanli looked worried. You don't have to if you don't want to. I will always trust you even if you don't tell me anything. For a long moment, fear had gripped me. What if he thought I was cursed? What if he feared me? But this man had trusted me with his life. I was ready to share everything with him. So I told him everything. The poison, the betrayal, the rebirth, the memories, the revenge. Every painful truth. When I finished, silence filled the room. Shanli reached out and touched my face gently. You suffered alone for so long. That was his first response. Not disbelief, not fear, only sorrow for me. My eyes burned. You believe me? I believe you. His thumb brushed away my tears. And if the heavens returned you once, then perhaps they simply refused to let us miss each other twice. At those words, I finally broke down crying, and he held me through every tear. 3 years passed. The capital looked very different. Peace had returned. Prince Ning became one of the empire's most respected figures. I was finally happy. Not the fragile happiness built on sacrifices. Not the desperate hope of earning affection. It was real happiness filled with warm mornings, shared meals, laughter, trust, and love. One spring afternoon, I sat beneath blooming peach trees while our young son chased butterflies nearby. Shunli approached quietly from behind. I leaned against him comfortably. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Wind moved through the blossoms softly. Then I looked toward the sky. In my previous life, I died believing kindness made people weak. I died believing love only brought pain. But this life taught me something different. The problem was never my heart. The problem was giving it to people who did not value it. Shunli kissed my forehead gently. What are you thinking about? I smiled. That the heavens gave me more than I deserved. He shook his head immediately.
No.
His voice was steady. The heavens simply corrected a mistake. My eyes softened. Perhaps he was right, because after one lifetime of sorrow, I was finally where I belonged.